I've already turned in, they can put it in the so I did that, so.
I'm trying to remember how to do this. Good evening, guys. Bear with me tonight. This is retraining. Please silence your cell phones. Join in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Lisa, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Jerry Valentine?
Here.
Darcy Kaplan? Here. Angela Brown? Here. Jenny Slopes? Here. Tara Shields? Here. Keith Gosha?
Here.
Jasper D. Christopher?
That's fine.
With that, I'm going to read the adopted policy. The adopted policy of the Berlin Township Zoning Commission is that each applicant or agenda item will be given 10 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson to make a formal presentation. The chair will allow questions from the commission members in order to provide a timely and orderly discussion of business for consideration. Finally, the audience will then be given up to 3 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson for each speaker to respond. The chairperson may limit repetitive debate, and all comments from the audience must be addressed to the chairperson. This is being recorded and it's live on YouTube?
YouTube and Facebook.
YouTube and Facebook. With that, Lisa, would you verify the meeting was advertised?
Yes, as a regular meeting at the end of 2022 in the Delaware Gazette.
Okay, and next, we need to approve minutes from the 3:14 and 3:21 meetings. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to those.
Approved. Okay. Second?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Ms. Slopes?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Gosha?
Abstain.
Mr. Valentine?
Abstain. And that was for both at the same time? Is that okay, do you have to do it separate?
I would do them separately. Yeah, which one was that one for?
That was the 14.
14?
That was for the 14th, okay, yeah, I would do the 21st separate, just because maybe different people were there.
Then can I get a motion to approve the 21st?
I'll motion to approve the 21st.
Anybody second?
Yeah, but, I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I did the
Sorry.
motion.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, and Darcy did the second.
Okay, Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Mr. Gosha? Ms. Slopes?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Abstain. Okay, with all that done, the next item on the agenda is an informal meeting with John Angelo Burke, Angelo Building LLC, regarding the property for sale 418-01-01-069-000 and 418-410-10-070-000 in Old Cheshire Zone's neighborhood commercial district in DC.
We have the number now, 0110.
Okay,
So, 10. I know it's a lot of work to do.
With that, John, yes.
My name's John Angelo Burke. I'm the owner of D'Angelo Builders. This is my first time appearing here, so I'm not sure exactly what the format is, so I apologize in advance. We've gone into contract for the land that's for sale just east of the Cheshire Market and shops that we have. My understanding is it's currently zoned the NCD Neighborhood Commercial District. I looked at some ideas of what we wanted to do, and one of the ideas I think I need to convert it to a old Cheshire planned unit development. And one of the reasons is because of the setbacks. This is just an informal document I put together, so I apologize. It's not, I haven't like gone through engineering and stuff like that. What I'm trying to do is get some ideas, some feedback from you, from what you're looking for. In most cases, I don't often get to do what I want. Usually I buy a piece of land and then you find out there's a setback, there's a side setback, distance from the garage, and then you design the house. Once you figure out where the garage is and you figure out where the front door is, the rest of the house kind of designs itself based on features that you, or views you want to accentuate in the house plan itself. And it's the same way with developing. We're right now developing a piece over on Cheshire Road, US 23. It started out as being a commercial high rise. It's on the ravine, but we're right next to a residential subdivision. So we ended up converting it back to just all 1, 2, and 3 family homes. More of an Epcot style. They're smaller, designed to be patio homes, but it sits on the ravine, so we'll have some walkout basements. Some houses will be 2-story or at least 1.5 story ranch, and a couple bedrooms upstairs. And so I have the same idea with here. I'm going to kind of jump around. Page 2 shows a basic layout that I have, which has 3 office buildings starting at East Street. They're about 180 by 100 foot in the shape of an L. Each building would have about 45 parking spaces behind it. After the 2 buildings, I put another entrance that would come in so that the commercial would have its own entrance off of Cheshire, and then there's another entrance coming in off of East Street. And my idea was to try and create some storefront look as you're going down like a village, as you're going down Cheshire Road, and then all the parking would be behind instead of out front, so that you're not, like if you're ever backed out of Cheshire Market, you're having to fight with the traffic that's there as you're trying to angle yourself around. I'd like to avoid that. I've included a bike path running across the front. I stuck with a 30-foot setback from the edge of the right-of-way, which is actually 60 feet from the center of the road, which is equal to what a lot of the buildings are. As you go towards the market side, if you go towards the farm lot side, I think they're 80 feet. So there's a farther setback there. After these 3 office buildings, I was going to have a park area with some ponds and some pavilions. There's a couple little red rectangles that you can see there, and that's where I've taken the 2 barns that are down here at the Pulte subdivision and just kind of dropped them on there. And then I started playing with a modified barn that matches the Shires. I had looked at what they had submitted. I think they're going for more of a cedar look. I thought I would stay with more of a farmhouse, white and black, or white and some stone work, and I'll show you some of those designs later on. And then the last part, I wanted to put in 40 duplex and triplex homes, similar to what we're putting in up off of US 23, and what we'd also done in another subdivision down in Westbrook, Berkshire Commons. I have some pictures of those later on. Addition to that, I'd say this is what I'm used to building. The residential specifically, we've just gotten into the commercial end of things. But for the last couple of years, I've also been working on rehab centers, going into gutting some remodeling, retirement homes, and then redoing them for other companies. And so I've looked at areas like the landings at Westerville or Walnut Trace and Gahanna. My thought was that the 7 acres, instead of having houses on it, could simply have a retirement center that would be clustered more towards the center. I know the setbacks are much farther. I think I need to be about 70 feet away from the existing houses, and then I'd like to go up at least 3 stories if possible. But again, would like to hear some feedback from you as to what you think of those ideas. On page 4, I've got some unit layouts. I've highlighted some questions that I'll come back to that I had specifically with regards to the building requirements. One being, is open space going to be a requirement? Is it something that we need? I do want some of it. I don't know if you have a specific value. Some other municipalities will tell you you have to donate 10% to that. If we do have this public parkland, who takes care of it? Do we take care of it, or is it something that the county takes care of it? I really can't have it private because we've got businesses, which means people will be frequenting there, and I would expect them to come over and use it. I actually set up a separate mail stop in the housing so that they wouldn't have to use that or consider it to be theirs as well. But again, I'm looking for direction from you. Page 5 gives you an overview. I just dropped some sample homes on the Shires area, although the barn is reflective of their actual plans in terms of size and then the relationship to our buildings. You can see as you're looking across the street, starting off on East Street, we would have the 3 office buildings. They're each about 7,500 square feet with another 5,000 square feet on the 2nd floor. And then we've got the 3 barns directly across the street from the Shires, starting directly across the street from the Shires entrance. I'd like to have my retention ponds in that area. I'd like them to back up to the barns and add like a paddle wheel, because this area used to have mills here. There used to be sawmills and grist mills here, and I thought it would be nice to stick with that theme for the village, what it used to be. And then you would also have an entrance that is strictly for the residences, and they come back and they combine. I've left the stub street so that I could talk to the neighbors behind us. They have 4 acres. If we could purchase that, it would allow us to have another 20 houses, or maybe I would move the park back to that area because that's one of the lowest points of the land in there. Our retention ponds would then feed directly across the street to the existing outlet where the water runs to the Allen Creek. I've got I drew up just one of these commercial buildings, and I just kept flipping it to represent it down the street. But I used a building that I'd seen on the corner of Dublin Road, Old Town Dublin. It's on the southwest corner there, and it had an ice cream shop on one side, had a coffee house on the other, patios where people could sit out. It's nice and close, closer to the street than ours would be, because we would still be 30 feet back from the street, where I think they're 10 feet back. Again, the parking would be behind. Up in the upper left corner, you can see the space can be divided into different shops, but the walls can also be opened up, and then I could, based on how much retail space somebody wants to have under their control, then we can reconfigure it. Even though it looks like 4 or 5 buildings from the outside, they really can be considered as one, if need be. I also would have other designs if I had a drive-through. Talk to a bank about maybe putting a banking outlet there, and they would need a drive-through, and I'd have to reconfigure that, and again, still make sure I've got the required parking. The next page, I'm showing the concept for the barn. The ones on my drawing, my 3D drawings are all just one story, but I also drew a second story to one. When you look through the history of the mills around here, some of them are 3 stories tall. They usually have single windows. I would like to try and mimic that. I had thought if I had at least one of these as a 2-story, then I could have an exercise facility up above, but then that barn I probably want to be, private, more private and part of the use for the residences. I'm not sure how I would address having outside people come in and use it, whereas as opposed to the office space, which would be strictly retail. I'm not sure if I wanted to retail the barn area itself, but we've got some time to get into that. Again, that's why I'm looking for some of the feedback to help me shape what we ultimately end up doing. The last sets of pages, A8 is the actual houses that we are going to be building over in Cheshire Crossing. These are single-family homes. I've already built a couple of these in the past for some other people. I hold the licenses to these, and then we'll modify and adjust them to fit the various lots. The nice thing about these plans is that if you go to the next page, they can be ganged, and they can be done as duplexes or triplexes. In the bottom left corner, Benton Commons, this is actually a 22 units that we built a couple years ago, or designed a couple years ago. A friend of mine, Joe Sylvester, he built them. It was his project. I did all the building designs for him, and then attended all the meetings for council. There's some recreational concepts that we've talked about. One is Evans Farm has an enclosed post office, and I really like that concept. I don't like standing out in the rain trying to get my mail. So we're doing that over off of US 23 in Glen Conic. I'd like to have a similar building that also doubles as a pavilion. I actually have that on one of the corners of the residential side. So again, it's separate. Not people from the retail side shouldn't be using it. But we also had some concepts for some bocce courts, fire pits, and then you see a lot of these open pavilions with fireplaces if you visited any EPCON subdivisions or any of the Romanelli and Hughes projects that they're doing now. So again, to incorporate something like that, the idea would be that you have approximately 40 or 50 houses right now that are in that old Cheshire area. We would add another 40. That would give us almost 200 people that could frequent the shops, play at the park and live there at the same time. So you're within walking distance. And that's in addition to the surrounding subdivisions that we've built in, Sherman Lakes, Harbor Point, Meadows, and all the new ones that keep popping up every time I drive down. I see something new going in. Page A10 shows some houses that we've built in the past. These are pretty much my standard materials if I'm left alone. I'm not really a vinyl siding person. I'm usually doing stone and stucco or stone and board and batten's become really popular, so we've been doing a lot of that. I might do some of these houses all board and batten only because that lends itself to that farmhouse look. I've also starting to like to look at the metal roofing as well. So it's something to think about because originally, I think it was back in the 80s, everybody was expecting Cheshire to grow and be more of a resort area with Allen Creek after it had been built. And so I think of it as cottages that people would come up. I don't want to build large houses like we have down at the Meadows or Harbor Point or Summerwood because they can go down there and buy one of those if that's what they want. I'm really looking more for single people or people that are retiring. I'm expecting that we'll take care of the lawn care, at least along the fronts and stuff, and I'd like to have some fencing so if they have pets, each person can have their own private space for their pet to go out to. And then if you wanted to enjoy green space, you could go to the park itself, let alone, visit anywhere in Allen Lake and go biking and hiking and boating and other recreational activities that you like. And then the last page is just some of our doors and windows and lighting that we use. Again, up above the devices. So I've gone throwing a lot at you all at once. I guess I'm wondering if, you're expecting to see 7 houses and that's it on that land, or if you're actually contemplating it being used with that village type retail space, if that's something I should, pursue, or do I need to pick a different direction and start over?
Okay. So I heard you say retirement center or rehab facility. Did you?
That's one direct, yes, that's one
Okay, so that's a
direction.
possibility. That's not something that you're.
Yeah, I'm thinking that 7 acres would lend itself to having a larger building that's farther away, so that you're not looking at a massive 30 feet from the property line, like you do. A house is only allowed to be 35 feet, but if we're 70 feet away and the building's 45 feet tall, then the relationship is the same.
Gotcha. So that would be the parcel that's closer to Allen Creek.
Farthest away.
Farthest away.
That's
Okay,
the-
so the one that's deeper.
It's deeper, yes.
Okay, so instead of 40 houses, you would contemplate something like that.
Yes.
Okay, that's where I wasn't catching. And you mentioned the barns, and I heard you say an exercise facility, but what other types of uses for those barns are you?
I saw them more as I drive by the Pulte barns down here where the swimming pool is. You see people playing, you see them having picnics or gatherings on the weekends. There's also a basketball court there, and I see some kids playing there as well. A lot of people I see pull up and just walk the path there, in addition to walking through the subdivision itself. Our area is not really big enough to put a swimming pool in, unless I was to dedicate it for that and then try to draw more people, but you're getting out of my wheelhouse in terms of running that.
Okay, and if you were to go the home route, what's the price point on those types of homes?
Well, I think we're stuck at $500,000-$600,000 for anything right now.
One of the things I did see on here, and like you said, we're looking at a lot fast, is signage. That has been kind of something we've been fussing about along the way. And I know you said there are 3 different entrances and then one on East Street as well.
Yes.
So do you have any thoughts about how you would sign those?
Well, I haven't read that chapter
That's okay.
yet.
That's all right. I'm just-
Most of the places I'm looking at, I want something that's a little bit more demure, that blends in with some landscaping and stuff. So like for our subdivision that we're doing, we'll have a couple block pillars with a block wall in between, and then we'll have some sort of marquee, either in stone or something painted on it, have the name of the community, and then landscaping around that. I could see that maybe down by the residential side, where I have a separate sign for the park, something similar along those lines. The office areas themselves, a couple of them, I've actually got like the name of the restaurant on top of that. I don't know what your signage is, if you allow 1-foot letters, or I would have to look that over and
That's okay. I just kind of,
adjust for that.
that has been something that I guess we've been particular about in the past. You mentioned a pet area, but that would be not like a dog park or something. You're saying the individual homes would sort of have their own area.
Yeah, a lot of, well, I'm going to be joining the elderly ranks this year, my birthday. But my mother, for instance, has pets. And so for her to move, she lives out in the country now, for her to move into a subdivision like this, she would still want to bring her dogs, and you
Sure.
can't have the dogs running 5 yards down.
No, right.
Let alone some people, want to keep their kids, their playthings and stuff. isolated. One of the things I like about Epcon, the houses are closer together, but they'll cut out different shapes and then use the space between the houses to give you some patio space so that you're not out on the back patio and 12 families are, all entertaining and you can see them. You get a degree of privacy by having it around to the side. So we would incorporate something similar to that as well. But if you let your dog out, it would be nice to let them have the yard to run. So our last subdivision started off as condominiums, and then we went to lot lines so that people would be able to have their, put their fences and stuff up. And so now they're actually just homes on small lots.
So did you anticipate like little privacy fences around each?
I wouldn't have anything taller.
That's what they're, what, 6 foot, 5.5?
Well, 6 foot is a privacy fence.
Between the houses.
Maybe between the houses, we might have that, but behind the houses, I would limit it to 3.5, 4 feet tall. Usually we're doing like a picket style, or cross rails, and then we'll have chicken wire that they'll put there to keep the pets from getting in and out.
Yeah, I just kind of wondered how to, trying to envision it in my brain.
For the problem with that is mowing.
Sure.
Is then it's easy to mow all the front yard, but then if you can't get in, someone's gonna be calling and complaining, and then the HOA will have to deal with that. So I thought about setting it up where we would pay for the front yards as a community, and then you would add on if you wanted your backyard, and if it wasn't unlocked, then that's between you and the mower. So.
Okay. But they would be individually owned homes. You're not
Yes.
anticipating condos or multi.
Well, condos are individually owned.
I guess that
As
yeah,
well.
Yeah, you're right.
Except for the ones down there.
but- Pardon me?
Except the ones on Orange are leasing.
Oh,
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fun. That's crazy.
Houses with lots are worth more than condos.
Sure.
We're actually, except for a few lots, we're only going to be doing maybe 2 or 3 twin singles. And the only advantage to that is each house gets to be 5 feet wider. Romanelli and Hughes, their floor plans or Epcon, that 40 by 60 is a sweet spot for them because you can really do a first floor master. There's enough room for that. You don't need to go upstairs if you've got a 40 by 60 print. A lot of our plans start off at 35, and that's still a nice footprint, but usually that's a story and a half plan that we'll do. So if I can keep everything as a twin single, over here on 23, we actually varied our lot sizes instead of having a uniform lot. We did some 35s, some 45s, so that we've got different styles of homes. Unfortunately, as a custom builder, I rarely build the same house twice, or if I did, you wouldn't know it because we made so many changes along the way. So I'm not really looking for there to be 5 house plans and then we just alternate, alphabetically where we put them. They'll probably all be different to some degree, other than staying within the style of the peaks, the exterior materials that we'll use, window treatments, landscaping, things like that. We would want that to be consistent, but that would be in the development text. We would want the freedom to be able to design whatever fits for that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just what you're telling us, it looks pretty interesting. I would just say, read this section 18 well and adhere to it. And I think this kind of supports this kind of a thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of vagueness. Actually, I've
Yeah.
gone through and highlighted some stuff. So when I was looking at the original Cheshire commercial, it seemed like that I was stuck with that 80-foot setback from Cheshire, which means I'd have to have my parking out front. I definitely did not want that, but again, I wasn't sure what you would be looking for. But some of the questions I had that I highlighted in pink for the development standards, is there a percentage of open space that's going to be required? Or just the fact that I have some open space and how I'm treating it on the plan, would that be sufficient for you? I have gone through on page 2 and actually calculated all my buildings, the square footages and stuff, all the roads, the parking and driveway areas that I've drawn thus far, because it wasn't completely finished. But I come up with a structure coverage of 20% and a pavement coverage of 22%, which is under the numbers that are required under the NCD, but there are no requirements under the PUD
You're right.
provision,
It's kind of
right?
strange that it's
Um,
Maybe
But
it's 2004.
I guess I still wanted to show that we would meet those under that, because that zoning still lays under, right? Even though we have text that allows us to deviate from a lot of those things. I still wanted to show that we would be in compliance for that.
Well, and you know, what you're proposing shows a lot of what we like to see, which is usable open space. You know, it's one thing just to have some trees with a bunch of brush that nobody can really walk through.
Yes,
So, I mean, I think that helps weigh things that you're making it usable and
Sure.
user-friendly and community kind of based. So
Sure.
I think, you know, that factors in. But I don't think this has an open
No,
space
it's-
percentage requirement.
it's not required, it says you may encourage me to do it.
Right, yes.
So,
And then we do.
and I also thought it looked nice to have that across from the Shires, because they're more of a rural setting, and to have them looking at shops across the street is probably not what they had intended or thought would happen. The other thing I had, you mentioned paths in here. So I had run a biking path down the whole front. Again, it's on the other side of the telephone poles.
You know what material you're gonna use for the path?
I was gonna use an asphalt.
Okay, not gravel.
Pardon me?
Not gravel.
No.
No, I'm not a fan of gravel, because it always seems to get lost. So yeah, I would like to have the pavement, I'd like to have curbs on all of our roads.
Answered
Going
all my
back to
questions.
the inside portions. But then when I got down to where the housing was, you currently have a requirement that the house needs to be 40 feet back from the street for the garage door. I think it's 30 for the house itself. And that's a lot of asphalt. I only need 24 feet behind the sidewalk to put a car there. So if I had a sidewalk and I had the verge, then we would be probably at 35 feet to that garage door. But if I don't have sidewalks on one side, which is the next thing we'll talk about, then I really only need to be 25 feet from that curb, so that cars can park off the street and not in the way of people passing by.
Is there a setback from the center line of the road?
That's what I thought, but I was trying to find.
I think it said right of way.
Extension, minimum front setback is 30 feet
We'll talk about it in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
from the street.
Thank you.
And so, in our Glen Conic subdivision 23, what we did was we put the sidewalk on one side of the street. We made it 6 feet wide so that people can pass one another. What I didn't really want was people crossing the streets willy-nilly. If the kids are biking, then they stay on that one side of the street and not have to worry about them darting across, unless they're going home, of course. So what I was thinking about doing was only doing the inside portion around, which would also, the sidewalks would feed back to the parkway, so that people could ride their bikes back into there. And then on the outside portion, I was just gonna have the houses, just grass run right up to the street. That also gives me a side that I can put my lamp posts on and my fire hydrants on, so that they're not in the way of the sidewalks themselves.
And would there be on-street parking in that residential type area?
Well, actually, I would provide some areas for parking, but every house has a 2-car garage, every house has a 2-car parking space in front of it, so you already have 4 people that can visit, and then to have, down by the pavilion on the corner, to have another 6 or 7 spaces, and maybe another outlot down here, in between the two, a little dead space, I might have some there, or I might have to clean that up and put a nicer radius there. Plus, we would have parking behind the houses at the third barn we have there.
You've covered a lot of stuff, and without going line by line through our thing.
You know, the only thing I saw was, it talks about a density of 5 per net developable. And I think you
Yes.
start with 11 acres, but that,
It actually drops down to 9.325, it's 10.97 acres. 85% of that is 9.325. So times 5 equals 46 dwellings max that I could have. And I took dwellings to include apartments, so I drew 40 houses. And then I would be able to fit 2 2,500 square foot apartments above each of these commercial spaces, if people didn't want to have an office up there. I could also fit 3 1,600 square foot spaces above there, but then I would have to back the houses down to 36. Because from what I read, the density is immutable. We don't get to change that at all. So as long as we stay within that, but I didn't see a density for commercial. I'm assuming that's run by parking spaces. If you don't have enough parking spaces, then you can't have another building or additional space.
John, one of the other things that you mentioned was the retail space and that the ownership, homeowners associations and stuff. Is this whole thing to be governed by a homeowners association?
I would think that we would have an overarching body that's
That's the whole
governing this.
thing.
Yes, I would think that the units above would be condominiumized, so they could be either offices or residences. The units below would all be condominiumized as offices that people could use and build out as they see fit. A lot of times you'll see these buildings are built as shelves because the need of a dentist is much different than the need for a grocery store. And so you have to rerun your plumbing and you can't really plan for everybody. You have to wait until somebody comes in, and then usually that tenant pays for that portion of customization for their space.
And would it be your intention to retain ownership of the barns and the commercial areas, or?
That's my intention.
Okay.
I'm not, unfortunately, as a builder, I have to be prepared. We've had conversations, as I develop a lot, I can sell a lot to somebody to build as long as they follow the development text. Eventually, even if I kept them all, or I should say on the offices, because there's a limitation to how much residential I'm allowed to hold on to. I'm eventually going to sell them, and the next person that steps in those shoes needs to operate within the framework that we create. And I think that's where the development text becomes very important, because that's going to govern everything that we do. So it's important to know, are we taking care of the park, or is the township? Are we taking care of the?
Yeah, it's usually under the auspices of your HOA or whatever management company or whatever you set up. It does not become the responsibility of the township. Am I correct? Right?
So when somebody from the public 3 subdivisions away trips and falls, it's our fault, right? That's what I need to know.
The only other thing that I would add is divergence, 0 is good. So following this closely.
Yeah, that's the goal, but I mean, so what we had up there, so they actually gave us 16 single-family home lots, and then it was 12 lots that can be split into duplexes, either singles or connected, or they could actually be a triplex, and they would all be connected at that point. And the idea was if interest rates keep going up and the economy goes down, then I could go to build some triplexes and fit more people in, and we support the HOA fees and stuff. But as I have it now, as I've made some hard choices with utilities and things, The most we'll do is the triplexes in that subdivision, because I can't, like the gas company can't do a lot that's able to do 1 to 3. You had to pick 1 or 2. So we knew we were gonna do 2, and whether they're connected or not doesn't hurt them. Same thing with water and power as well. So I've got to make a lot of those decisions. And again, getting the feedback from you, I will try to have as many answers as possible. But ultimately, if we diverged too far, we would be back in front of the board asking for permission for something that we're doing. So I think the city has some latitude to allow me to do certain things, but if it gets outside of a certain percentage or whatever, whenever they deem it to be outside those bounds, then I would have to go back before city council. But the goal is to have it all designed on paper. I'm happy with it, you're happy with it, and we proceed to completion.
Angela?
Yeah, I honestly, I really like this. You know, we've been having meetings, for the 36, 37 area.
Yes.
And what's hard is those are such massive lots, right? That need developed in order to get businesses to come in, and we desperately need more businesses. So I really like the idea of these shops. And to bring in some business. And I love the idea of the parks. I'm totally fine if we end up with some apartments or condos, basically condo style apartments above some of these. I get that. And
They're
Yeah.
smaller homes, like about 1,600 square feet,
Exactly.
so they're not,
No.
they're not as small as your limitations
Exactly.
are, but they're not the same as a Harbor Point home, which was typically about
Exactly.
3,000 square feet.
Yep. Oh, I'm saying above the office spaces, like.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
So, because honestly, that's some of what we put into the cloud for along 36, 37 as well, for the business and business area. So I'm totally fine with that. I think my only concern is how those parks would play in and kind of what parameters you would set around those. Question, the field that is, if you're looking down at your sheet of paper, to the right, that portion of the park, is that like a basketball court or something that's perpendicular to the?
No, I quit drawing it.
You're fine. You're fine.
I was getting ready to sweep in and put some parking there so people could go out to the barn, and I thought,
You're fine.
I gotta
was
stop
like,
and
what is
get some
that?
feedback
Yeah.
at some point.
No, you're good.
I'm not even sure the third, do I need the second pond? That's really a calculation.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that we're not overloading that pipe that
Mhm.
leads to the north. So we have to have water that's retained, and there might be some underground retainage under some of this
Sure.
parking, but then they'll have a timed release so that it can release it out. And again, we're not washing out
Yeah.
downstream. So that might just be all playground or green space
Yeah.
that's over there with maybe a parking area. I haven't decided
Sure.
that.
And I think honestly, I mean, the closest playground, is at the bottom of the dam.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's,
One over here in Cheshire Meadows, I think.
There's one.
Yeah.
well, what I'm saying is the closest public playground, not associated with a.
Inside of the subdivision.
Inside
Because
of
this would be
subdivision.
right on the main
Exactly.
strip, everybody can
So
see
in
that.
terms of a actual park, this would be, a nice option if one of those was a playground with swings or things. of that
Sure.
nature. But obviously that does make it a little bit harder with, if someone gets hurt, who does it?
Well, you'd have insurance when insurance is
Yeah.
for, right?
Yeah.
That's why there's no more monkey bars.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Oh, we have them at school though. My son ended up with a terrible rip this week, so I'm helping his broken foot, so. So, yeah, I mean, if you did have a park, basketball court, like one just some things like that. We have so much feedback of people really wanting parks in the area.
Sure.
Because we have Allen Creek State Park, but people really wanting parks that they can visit. And we have, Berlin Township does have a parks program now it's a resident run parks and trails program that they are starting a master plan on. They have funding for that now. But I mean, so they could potentially help you with, some thoughts on that. So I love the trail planning, because that's exactly what we're looking for. But I mean, I think this could be a really great addition. So, and something that rural feel with cute shops that we've been wanting to come in for, a long time, so.
I agree with that. Okay, my name is Scott Malenky. Me and John are long-term residents here.
Okay.
I live on 3 Beach and Page, John lives on Africa. There's more to this than that. From my heart and John's heart, this is about building our community and having the right atmosphere. We didn't want to see someone come here and screw that property up. We're trying to bring back the old aesthetic look, bring back privacy, and that's why it's really important to have this parking behind to keep the atmosphere correct for this. Ice cream shops, a dentist office, anything can go there. There is no retail space left. We have to make sure this retail space is
right.
beautiful for the community. The community is basically living in the 60s. And I have 3 companies in this community, okay? I'm here to make it better for everybody. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I guess it comes with age, me and John,
Yeah.
And so, but this one it is for the community, it's for all the people in the neighborhoods. And that comes with it. We want to make sure we fit the zoning needs for the community also. But we want to bring that environment, that brings a friendly environment, the Worthington, the Westerville environment, where you can walk to the shops and enjoy it. John is not an architect. He drew this up. He drew this stuff for Sylvester. Everybody knows Sylvester. This is the kind of talent this guy has. His stuff is A1. That's why we're partnering up on this. It's all you got to look at what he does.
Yeah.
I do the
Scott owns
stuff.
the tavern on the creek. It's around the corner from there.
What's up?
He owns the tavern on the creek.
Oh, you own Tavern at the Creek? Oh,
Yes.
yes,
I have an excavation company here on
Okay.
3637, the trucking company.
yeah,
But it is for here, and we're living in the 60s in the tavern on the creek in the building I'm in. I can't do anything with it for the community. I'm trapped. I'm dissatisfied where I'm at. I can't do anything more with it to make it for the community. It's impossible. I'm leasing it. I can't do anything to make a nice restaurant there. I can see a rusty bucket or a bag of nails up there for the community. You cannot go to the restaurant in Polaris on a Friday or Saturday night and be there an hour and a half late. It's where we're at right now. Why not bring this nice environment to our community? That's what we're looking at, and that's what I live down the street. Me and John live down the street. We're gonna live with what we're driving by every day. We're not gonna see somebody else screwed up. That's why we're walking on this land. That's the truth of it, and we're here for you. That's why we're asking what you guys want also. I just wanted to say a couple words there.
yeah, no, I mean, that's perfect, and it is, that feel is, with the Shire across, it's like, that rules, yeah, she's a Shire. So,
We need your building justice.
that feel is that's what we want to keep. It's like, that's what we want to keep.
The water wheels, running,
Yes.
the ponds, you walk with your kids down the street, down the pass. That's what we're looking for.
Yes, exactly.
Obviously, we're doing this to make money too, but there's another part to it, but there's more to it,
One of the other questions I had with the development standards was the building height at
Yes.
35
Yes.
feet. Is it possible to go to 45 feet?
Well, with your mechanicals on top,
If you short it by 10.
Short.
your mechanicals on top can exceed the 35.
Well, I just built a triplex down in OSU area, and we put rooftop patios up on top so that the units could enjoy without having to go out into the neighborhood. They could just sit up there and enjoy the skyline. The problem is a 35 foot, you're only able to put an 8 foot, 9 foot, 8 foot, and then you get your 4 foot wall plus the thickness of the floors. It is very tight. And then I ran into the plumbing code requires the plumbing stack to be 10 feet above the roof floor that you're walking on. So I still ended up with being at 45 at the very center of the building. We built some cross walls for privacy. Columbus, other than I built in the OSU area, which differs, but mainly in Columbus, if their limit's 35 foot, every 2 foot you're back from the setback, you're allowed to go a foot higher. So by the time where I built those walls, if I'd been somewhere else, my walls would have been legal, but because I was in OSU, I had to go get permission. from them. My current standard though is 10-foot ceilings on the first floor, 9-foot on the second. And so really, if I had a height of 45 feet, it would give me more room to play. And I'm not talking about the housing area, I'm just talking about this commercial section. And I thought, well, maybe the first building needs to be at the 35 foot because it's transitioning to the other neighborhoods. But the next two buildings, if I could go to 45 foot, even with just some, one component, as silly as this sounds, but I did some research, like there's a number of bars called the silo, where they build it in a silo and you're up on that upper deck is actually, of the silo is actually the restaurant area where you can sit and look out over the areas. One of my next things is to get a drone out there on the land and go up to 30, 40, 45, or 30, 35, 40, 45 foot and see what the views are. Because I think if I could get a rooftop patio up that high, I'm pretty sure you can see the golf course. And I think you can see across through some trees, but I think you can see where the lake area is as well.
That's gonna go back, I think we need to go back to our updated view of, and look at what we did for the BCO area, because some of those buildings, we actually did,
So
we did alter some
like in
height.
Powell, it's 40 foot. So you're building custom homes that have high pitched roofs. Those all fit within that 40 foot. Powell unfortunately measures their 40 foot from around the entire foundation of the house, which means walkouts are illegal because the house will then be above the 40 foot. Columbus has a rule that you measure 5 feet away from the house because they know like some people go by the front door, but you can raise the front door up 6 steps. And you can get your house to be 35 feet from there is 41, 42. Columbus has you measure 5 feet away from the house all the way around, whatever the ground is 5 feet away. That's where you measure to the top of your 35 foot plane. So there's a wide variety. Places where I work have a lot of different interpretations. And I understand that you don't want something massive right next door to you, like you're in a downtown environment. But we would be along US 23, wouldn't be the whole building that would be at that 45, but where I want to get like that rooftop patio, I think it would be nice if you think of the old Bag of Nails in Westerville that has like 4 floors at that top, or was a rooftop area. I don't know if anybody ever went out to the Iron Horse Inn that was out in Johnstown. I think it's closed now. But they had a back patio that was up on the upper deck. That you could sit out and look out over the countryside. Very nice. I think the views would be, I'll know once I get my drone video done, but I think the views would be very nice to be able to sit up there and enjoy that. But I can't do that at 35.
So let us, so in our, like I said, in the BCO information, we do have, we did actually look at some differences in height. And for buildings that were back further from a vantage point then. So how can do we just give that information to you, Kathy? Just look it up.
I would check with the fire department.
Well, it's in terms of what we allow as well,
Yeah, I mean, right now it's like 35 feet for sure. But in the BCO and the BI.
We had actually gone through some
the
changes.
height requirements are higher.
Yes.
What about Evans Farms? Didn't we have some higher there?
Yes, I don't need anything that high. That's
No,
that has more of that
there are
downtown.
2 parts to Evans Farms and only one side is us.
Oh, is it? No.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm not,
And our permit hasn't been started yet.
No, I don't know what we permitted
I
them.
don't know.
so, I mean, I guess I would say you can propose it and we weigh what the benefit is to the community.
And the overall.
Yeah,
fee.
and we have not typically been a fan, let's put it that way, that we've kind of held fast to that 35 feet. But I think if you can be flexible and consider, making the case that if I could go 45 feet, I could do X, that it may get considered. I mean,
Sure.
the neighbors are gonna have something to say about it.
Well,
Definitely the
I'm sorry,
trustees.
other than
Right,
being across from the Shires, those buildings will be the farthest from.
sure, but
The
there is
residential
that other
properties.
community back, I guess
Yeah,
it's
the
on the side.
arbors.
Anyway,
Yes.
I'm just saying,
Okay.
we've stuck to that pretty hard, but, you know, what you're proposing sounds kind of cool. So it might be something that could be considered, so.
Sure.
I'm just saying, it could, maybe,
Okay.
possibly.
Well, I can throw out a design and then you guys can tell me
Yeah.
if it fits or not. Because obviously, if I do have that rooftop patio, it has to be somebody that wants all 3 floors
Yes.
to use it, unless it's just a residential and they have their own private,
Right.
patio area.
I just see the arbors of Cheshire and those houses seem to be sitting pretty
You're
low.
pretty low.
So to look out and have buildings,
Is that where you're at?
I don't think
In
most of the neighbors,
So you're in the
that
cloud.
could be something. 35 feet is,
Yeah,
and
so I feel
it's
like-
not a divergence, 45 is, so that's.
Yeah, there's another 200-foot lot in between them and us.
And that's what I was gonna ask you, what's the topo of the land here south of you? How far down is it going?
That's another 4, the other land that we don't own,
Yeah,
there's
there's
another 4 acres.
Yeah, but how far down, what's the topology going down? How far is it going down?
I can't read the small numbers of the yards.
Looks like it might be only 8 or 10 feet, 8 at the most.
You can't read that?
A little difficult.
Here's a magnifying glass. I can't-
The guy said, that's my natural license.
They are about 6 feet lower from our property line.
Okay, so my question was then if you have businesses on there and the parking is in the back, are you gonna have the lights turn off at a certain hour of the night so that those lights are not shining down onto the arbors in Cheshire?
I think what we would have is lights that point down.
Yeah, they still kind of, I mean, they're not used to seeing light over there, also now there's gonna be light in their bedroom windows.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that,
Yeah.
I just think we have to have some, like, in some commercial buildings,
Yeah, you're gonna have to have
2/3 of the
some
lights will turn off, but 1/3 of them stay on as emergency lighting. Almost like the street lights, you would still have that minimal light.
Yeah, I would try to minimize.
Plus, I'm
that.
assuming we'd have a row of pines.
Yeah,
that
well,
will
they'd
run
be pretty
between.
tall pines too.
We'll start out small.
You-
but
They
eventually-
grow every year. So
But
that
my point was, I wanted to talk to the owner of that land, because we could potentially put another 20 houses in there.
yeah, but so, yeah, I mean, if you did, then you would buffer.
And they would be at that 35.
Right, then they would use a buffer to that. And then what would the hours of businesses be for those
Well, I'm gathering 10.
10 PM, not 2 AM bars?
No.
No, I wasn't expecting something like that. I was thinking more, like ice cream shops, coffee house.
The 8 to 5, 8 to 8 type of
This
operation?
community's not set up for late night bars.
Yeah.
It's set up for,
Yeah, even a restaurant, I don't imagine.
Go past 10, I mean, Cheshire's closed like 10.
Anyway, so.
I'm from the restaurant business anyway, as a kid, so.
Yeah, I scrapped the pavilion, the park, where we're gonna have bands and play.
So curb and gutter, curb and gutter sidewalks around the whole thing?
Yes, the only thing would be the transition leaving. At some point, I've got to go back because the other roads don't have.
Okay, so I have questions about the barns as well.
Yes, sir.
And what type of activities?
what we're looking at right now.
You're not talking about having wedding receptions there and kids
Um,
having graduation parties one.
Well, they're not set up to be enclosed, like, when I think of wedding event places that I've been to, they've actually been in enclosed buildings with maybe an outdoor pavilion. I was thinking more of family picnics.
Okay, no alcohol allowed on the premises or alcohol
There might be alcohol down the street that's for sale, I'm not.
allowed? Right, yeah.
What's legal, I guess.
Yeah, I guess-
Yeah, I mean, if it's a park, I mean,
You wouldn't be illegal, you would not be walking around park drinking.
you shouldn't be.
But if there's a restaurant there, so that's like that, out of patio style things. But you don't, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I want to make sure that there's not that type of activity going on there.
No.
If there's gonna be drinking and, unless it's 4th of July celebrations and.
So
They ask for a
basketball and
permit,
then
but-
drinks.
Yeah.
Oh,
So just wondering what type of activity you think you would see in that area other than
I was actually letting the families themselves, I would thought that they would
the HOA would control that section of.
Yeah, I mean, so take the barn down the street, I mean, maybe it is a no alcohol area. Is that being monitored if somebody has a picnic and the family's there and they're not getting out of hand?
Same thing with Allen Creek Reservoir. You know, you're not allowed to drink there, but people go cook out at the beach and they still drink their beer, but,
Yeah, and let's not even talk about boating.
You're right, that's a whole different story.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the rule that you want in place, then I would put that in place. Ultimately, it's the HOA that's gonna be policing
Sure.
that.
But I wasn't
think
sure if
that's
you were
really
trying to
gauged
go
by the
that
number of
direction with it or not.
unruly
Yeah, I
people,
guess we-
because a lot of our rules are set up that way. It's not for the individual, infraction. It's when that infraction impacts.
The rest of the library and everybody else.
Yes. And so if you didn't have that rule, how would you stop it? But if the rule is you can't, then it's easy to stop somebody that's been drinking. So I probably would say we'd have to go with that rule. But again, I'm looking for you for that direction. And then we live within that framework.
Yeah, we'd have to draw something.
But I guess the question I'm trying to synthesize the question is the intention to use it as, for example, a rented out event space.
I didn't see that. If it's for the public, then you're not really
Yeah.
renting that space out. If
that's a whole nother corporation story.
so our pavilion over in the other subdivision on 23, I would expect that you would reserve it if you were gonna have a family function, because then you don't want all the neighbors, to necessarily come to that. But at any other time, it's open to anyone who, stops.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't draw a lot of parking around it. I mean, you draw a pickleball court or a basketball court that was accidental.
Yeah, so like I said, I hadn't finished that, but those are the ideas you have to think about as well, because, if I drive by a park and I see a family set up, I don't know if they rented that pavilion specifically for that. I know some in Westerville are like that, but I just don't go there. They're already taking up the majority of the space, and I would find another place to have my little picnic that we were gonna have. So, or I'd ask permission, if it's okay if I use the little corner.
So I know Angela brought up the VCO, the height, so we did find that it's, the VCO does, say that you can go up to 45 feet in height, except, the height of the buildings may extend up to 47 feet for a maximum of 10% of the building length. So you may wanna look at this, I mean, it would still be a divergence, but technically the VCO would allow, a maximum of 47 feet for up to 10% of the building length,
Okay,
to allow for architectural variations, features, and designs. It can't be higher than 3 stories.
so if the building's 180 foot long,
That's a big 10%.
18 feet.
that's 18 feet.
It could be higher than the 35.
Yeah.
Building length should be measured from the furthest edges of each elevation regardless of varying recesses and projections. Okay, so,
I mean, sorry, so you're saying if it's 180 feet long, 18 feet of it can be higher than 35 foot, but the rest of it has to be at the 35.
Or less.
Is that right?
That's what
I was interpreting the 47 as the 10%.
hold on, let me just reread this. Okay. In all other buildings within blah, 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 the sub-areas should not exceed 45 feet in height, except however, the height of these buildings may extend up to 47 feet for a maximum of 10% of the building length to allow for architectural variations, features, and design.
So they can go, 10% can go up to 47 feet, so you can go 45 feet.
But not the whole building, just a
Not the
portion
whole,
of,
yeah,
to give you some
portion.
different design elements. Yeah,
But 45 feet would be a variance.
For this zone.
For this area, but it is allowed in other areas, given, so if you were to make a case that felt.
yeah, I guess I'd probably start with bringing in the Columbus code that shows that it allows for the pitches. Because that's the other thing. Now, I'm talking about a flat roof that I need, the 42-inch knee wall has to be below 35, which is tough to meet if you've got 10-foot ceilings below. But if you had a pitched roof, then you can't really do more than 2 stories. It's kind of hard to do
I think if you make a good case.
10 and 9.
The difficult thing that you just mentioned, you said Columbus, and we fight every meeting about what the surrounding areas do in the community, and you said you've been here. Everybody likes it to be rural and out in the country and have that look, so trying to stay away from those dense.
Every other meeting I go says, we're gonna follow whatever Columbus's sewer rules are,
Every-
water rules
But
are.
then you also remember, this is gonna be organically designed for the atmosphere, 100% for.
But I mean, I would
I
never
just
look
wanted-
at POW, which has that 40-foot freedom, would be another example I could give you of someone that gives me that extra footage, so that you can do some of that.
I think it's gonna depend on what you're asking for, if it's a little bit so you could do a pitch or something like that to make it work, I think it just depends on what you're really asking for.
Yeah, and I'm not really a fan. Downtown, I like those, high-rise buildings, but Evans Farm, that's just a little too tall for all the rest of the residential that's there. It looks very nice.
You're
And
thinking at the corners or ends of them, you would do the higher ones?
that's what I'm thinking, and I was even thinking of maybe taking maybe the turn where the L is.
Right.
So, because if I was to follow Columbus's rules, if I went up to 45 feet, I would need to be 10 feet further back than the 30-foot setback line. I would need to be at 40 foot when I went higher, so that from that same distance from the street, you're looking along the same plane. You're not seeing anything really taller. It's just farther in the distance. So it looks at the same sight line.
Just when you mentioned Evans Farms and the end caps being actually the elevator shafts, that's where it kind of stands out. It
Yes.
doesn't blend in.
Yes.
I think I try to look for how well does it fit the community and what you're building.
Yeah, and we're trying to stay with a farmhouse feel, the mills. Again, plenty of examples around here of what the building style should look like, because I want it darkened back to the 1800s when they first laid this out and platted everything. I kept looking at it as you lost like 20 lots when they put the dam in, and we're really just recreating that down here. And then hopefully, if that commercial area goes well, then people can come in and start redoing the other commercial, like where the market is, dentist office, and other shops and stuff as you come down here to give it more of an updated look.
I think your ideas are great though. I mean, I think in the past, that area wasn't really walkable. This really makes it a lot more walkable, and it does create more of a sense of community. And this is more of what we want to see in terms of businesses, as opposed to like the warehouses
Sure.
that have been really a problem for that area. And I love the barn look to kind of mirror the Shires, or the Shire. I like.
Yeah, and again, I'm hoping that your community will have something that you can walk to and use. Our community can also use it, and then we're grabbing from everybody else in the other surrounding subdivisions. You always have the choice to go to 36, 37 if you want to. You're actually 8 minutes away from Polaris if you head up to 36, 37 first. That's what I used to tell everybody in Harbor Point, because it takes about 45 minutes to drive down Africa to get to Polaris, but you can shoot up on the highway and you're there pretty quick. And then, of course, getting to Delaware if you wanted to shoot over to Sunbury as well. Sunbury would be another example I was trying to go through. They have that square, and it's nice having all those shops ringing that area. So if we could keep that up along that strip, I think it would look really nice.
I think we need to keep the box look out of our community, the box houses, and box retail out. Let's bring it, bring a nice environment. That's what we're shooting for here.
Anything else from up here?
I was gonna ask if anybody from the community had any
Well, that's.
questions.
First, Sarah.
That's next. All right.
Take it.
Can I drink a little sip of water?
Jay, do you have anything?
But Tara's next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tara.
Hi, I'm Tara Shields. I'm an alternate on the board, but I'm also a property owner in the Arbors of Cheshire. But I wanted to come, one, because in case I have to sit, I'm familiar with what's going on, but two, just wanted to bring a couple concerns from our neighborhood because, there are some, I guess, structural things that we are dealing with in this small neighborhood. There's 19 houses. Just to make you aware and for what it's worth. This back, where it runs along the Van Loon's property right here.
Yes.
Coming from this neighborhood, we have a giant stream of water when it rains, and it comes down this property line and down our East Street and down into our neighborhood and floods at the end of our court.
Okay.
So I think it comes from the meadows right in this area. So if there's any impact from this, it could cause chaos. So just keeping that in mind with drainage
Yes.
issues. To East Street, I have a very hard time believing that you're gonna have room for a bike path and an entrance. Like, this isn't even a two-way road right here. You can't really, I mean, you can fit two cars, but it's
Yeah, it's a
It's
more
already,
residential.
yeah, it's in the, you know,
And that's why I put the other entrance, it's really more of an exit from that area. The main commercial entrance is in between building 2 and 3.
right, but, you know, with parking here, the road, a building and a bike path, like, that's not a very large strip of land, so I can't imagine that that's,
That's drawn to real world dimensions.
okay. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, because the parking has to be 6 feet away from the property line, and you have a 19-foot minimum.
So are you,
for
then
the car.
you're removing all the trees that are currently there? On
The
next to
majority,
Van-
yes.
Next to Van Loon's property.
Yes.
So
We'll
there
be
will
planting
be-
our own.
There will basically be no buffer for Van Loon's property to your, Van Loon's house to your
It'll be parking lot.
parking lot.
We would have a row of pine trees, kind of like you see on Lewis Center Road, where the Meadows of Lewis Center is. They ran a row of pine trees down there. We would do the same thing.
Water
Yeah,
runoff is
granted,
not a problem.
They're 6 feet. Well, the water runoff I was gonna deal with
Okay, good.
separately. But it's, even the subdivision we're doing now, we took out all the bad trees in between our 2 properties, and then the city is gonna go through and tell us, we're gonna talk to the neighbors and then tell us where they want the replacement trees, but as I keep pointing out to everybody, you can't plant trees 4 feet apart, half of them die. They have to have
Yeah.
some spacing in
For
between them.
landscapers, right?
And then unfortunately, it takes time for those trees to grow up and actually provide you the shield. I mean, we could buy trees, I think, as tall as 8 foot. After that, it gets hard to find, very cost prohibitive.
I was like beauty mountain with the trees on top.
Well, the mountain creates another problem, because then you're spilling water back onto their property. We want everything to fall on our property. So to talk about your drainage issue, we built a house in Sherman Lakes that after we finished it, we found out in the spring there was a unnamed stream that ran right through the middle of our house. How the county and the engineers didn't catch all this stuff and didn't take care of it, I don't know.
Well, that was part
They
of that.
didn't take care of it when it was done. I don't know if you've talked to the county or tried to get anything done from them. They do like to nod their head. Township too, but they don't actually come out and do anything. So part of my goal would be to reroute that. I can't control the water that's coming from the neighbors, but any water that's coming from our property should be funneled to our ponds. We would want that water anyway, because we want to keep our pond stocked, and then the engineers actually work out the timing, because we only have we can't just let it run free. So somehow I would need to capture that. The other thing is, if I could get the neighbors to sell their property,
And
I
that's,
thought about putting our park back there to catch all of that water, and then I could easily reroute that. So if you could put in a kind word for
well, and
me.
that's what I was shaking my head at, is the Van Loons are probably gonna be your hardest, we've been told.
So when you say the van looms, do I have to drive out to Marysville to talk to them, or do they actually live there?
They live there, they own Van Loon Landscaping. And,
Okay.
It's the old lady Van Loon that owns it all, and I think it'll be a hard sell, but I don't know. That's only what that's hearsay, but, they've lived there for a very long time. I own that property for a very long time. So it was a sawmill, that's the mill. It was a sawmill that went through there, and it actually ties into Elm Creek watershed behind our subdivision.
So I was trying to figure out where the original mills were built.
Right
It was
down our,
Nettleman.
right down our street.
Nettleby that came through, built those, and I couldn't find any drawings or pictures, so I was looking for that as well.
And the one thing that I love the absolute most is the bike path. I have so many kids that I see driving on Africa Road, and they cut through meadows at Cheshire, or not, Summerfield, Summerwood, whatever that is right behind our neighborhood. And we allow them to cut through our backyard because I fear for their safety on Africa Road. And so I love the fact that there's a bike path. Hopefully you can connect it to meadows at Cheshire so that they have a safe path to get to the,
I have to get past Van Loon's property.
no.
That's a joke.
But I love that so much, so that's, and I do love the way it looks, that's what we wanted for Old Cheshire and not the big red warehouses that we.
Exactly.
It's a very, very painful situation. This is the Shire, and she went and she knocked door to door and talked to all of us neighbors and, kind of got their, input too. And I felt like that was something that, was really beneficial to the neighborhoods and the surrounding and things like that. And kind of got everybody on board. And that's me speaking from a neighbor, not from zoning. But I think, like she said, with parks and, places for our kids, our kids play in the 2 courts and we have an amazing neighborhood and we love it, but my son would love a basketball court, to go play on, and
Sure.
Places for, kids to go meet their friends from the other neighborhoods and stuff like that. So I do like the little shop feels and, like I was saying to him, people have mentioned like little breweries and, just little niche markets and things like that. And that's what we were hoping for. And, I love your design ideas. And we even my husband and I talked about the fact that we need littler style houses like ours, versus these big gigantic homes, that people, there needs to be more of community and more I want to say reasonable, because I know it's not going to be, there's still going to be 500,000 and 600,000, but just more cottagey feel like that. So I think overall it looks, like a great plan. It's just keeping in mind those little kind of things about the neighborhood behind, and like he said, the lighting and things like that, for the neighbors.
Yeah, most of the lighting we've been doing is those
the
arms that actually point back at the buildings, but I do understand what you're saying, you still get some glares. And if you've got a same light up on the 3rd floor, you're gonna be able to see the bulbs. So that's
The guy ziplining from the bar at the 4th floor.
Yeah, to the basketball court.
There's your drone view from our neighborhood.
Oh, nice. What height is that?
He was gonna double check, he's not sure.
Okay.
But I do have a drone in my car if you.
Yeah, I saw a community down in South Carolina. It was actually a 9-story building, so 40, 50, 60. They had, this is what your view is gonna be out of your condominium. I thought that was a really nice thing to do here, and we did it over.
But too, the sky at night, and that goes back to lighting, like the stars, and you can see, and I'm a telescope person, like I have a telescope when I go outside on my backyard.
Yeah.
Like they're ridiculous, even though we are still we're getting a little bit more developed, you can see them beautifully. So to have the lighting that shuts off at, a certain point in time, and that patio rooftop stuff, like, you're gonna see amazing, stars
Sure.
at night and making sure that you're, turned off for that one too.
Sure. What did you think?
I had a couple of questions.
We gotta talk about your barn now first. You can't replicate her barn.
We bought an old barn from Mount Vernon Barns. It's early 1800s. It was built before they used power tools. And they just took it down a couple months ago, and it's sitting
They're
back
bringing
there
it
on
down.
our property,
Ah.
the bones of it,
Right.
getting ready to be put back out.
Nice. Well, it looks beautiful. I studied it to try and come up with I designed it similar to your middle piece.
The
But
houses look huge compared to the barn, and it will be the opposite. The barn's gonna be big, and the houses are gonna be.
so I just dropped in our twin
Yeah,
singles
yeah.
to put something there. I think those are gonna be individual houses with some,
Mhm. Yes,
in-law
yes.
suites.
6 of them, 2 of them might be, a duplex, 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
But they're all.
You need a builder.
I'll keep you in mind.
And an excavator.
I might. The barns, I'm still kind of not sure what they're used for, other than you said there might be a gym in one. or-
Well, if I do the 2-story one, then there'll be a play area up above. I think the gym is the easiest thing. Or, again, this would be if it was more private, but like the HOA to have a place to meet because everybody doesn't want to meet in their own house.
Right.
And so that 2-story one might be the one that's closer, to the homes. The other ones, I had expected them to be open like a barn, down here at the Pulte, area. I showed it with some half-height, walls about 7 feet tall, so that you can't necessarily see what's, going on, but you can see if it's lit up. And some of the sides would have a couple rails. There's a, what's Gregory? Is that the road Parkway? Glen Park, yeah. So if you go down there, there's a building, it's a healthcare building, but it's got a stone wall, it's got the water runs right up against it, and the building rises up out of it. And I thought if I could have that mill, or that barn sit right there, then I could get a water wheel and put it on the side. Unfortunately, the water's not moving, so I would have to mechanically turn that wheel, but I could have it lift the water up and then drain it down the side and give it a nice feature, but then I gotta figure out a way the kids can't get their hands in it.
Right.
You put that right next to the ice cream shop. And then it's wax.
My idea was to build those barns to complement what you were doing, but I was gonna stay with a board and mat, siding probably with a white look and a black roof, where I think you're having a lighter roof and then shingles.
Yeah, a metal roof, possibly like a granite color,
Yeah,
and then, wood siding that's stained kind of a dark cedar kind of stain.
yeah. And then I was gonna do smaller cupolas than the ones you had figured out.
This third.
Or not, if you don't want me to. I can come up with something else.
This third building, I was concerned when you talk about being up high and we bought this for privacy, and I'm thinking, you're gonna have these decks up here and people are gonna have their binoculars and looking and seeing what's going on over here, and we
What are
would.
you guys doing?
Huh?
What are you guys doing?
That's what we don't want to
I'm just teasing.
So I just was concerned if they were too high, and there is a good healthy row of trees right there. And the barn is much more of a public kind of building.
I don't know how important the height is to me. I don't know that I need more than one rooftop restaurant. I just only don't need people throwing stuff at each other
Right,
from 2 different buildings. But knowing the parameters of what I can do, because I'm equally inclined to just have those as apartments, lessen the number of houses, and have those set up almost like cottages, because I start to think, how many people come up here to go boating but don't want to camp out? If they had a cabin style, above over the shops that they could park, and now I gotta make room for a boat, in a parking lot somewhere. But these are all things going through my head. Ultimately, I have to pick one thing. You know, or something that's one direction. You might have multiple uses, but I have to pick one direction. And that comes from feedback from you. And then just deciding where I'll go. I'm not in a situation where I have to do X or it's a deal breaker for me. You know, like I said, I'm 23. I bought that land in 2004, and I always envisioned like a 6-story high-rise looking out over the countryside. It's very beautiful, especially in the fall. But they built all those other houses around us. It's more of a residential feel. I ended up concentrating on being able to use the ravine. There's a little waterfall back there. We've got some lots that will have walkouts to them. I'm gonna try and get another barn down in that lower area so I create some walking paths to go through that area. I'm happy with what we ended up with, but it's very different than what I initially started out and presented to the city at the beginning. Downtown, I started off with a 9-unit apartment building, went to 7, and then flipped it over to 3 triplexes that all had their own rooftop patios. It's the same 6,000 or 7,000 square foot building, but I just kept changing the uses for varying reasons, and ended up very happy with what was there. They have underground parking, so you don't have to park out on the street, and then you can, because some of the neighborhood is a little suspect down there still, you can live up on the patio. I've even looked at artificial grass that you can get that's pet friendly and lives up, they have like egg crates so that you can just hose it down and clean it, and it all runs away. So a lot of different ideas bouncing through my head. The idea is that I guess the most satisfying part of my job is driving back and seeing people using the houses. I've got half the houses I've built, the same families are in them when I originally built them. Others, some of them are on their 5th family. And I still get calls from people trying to convince me I did something wrong 20 years ago. 5th owner, still trying to convince me I did something wrong.
And my other question is, the retail shops, how do you decide, or, you know, what kind of shops go in there, or who decides that, or, you know, I would like to see like some coffee shops or a bookstore, or, you know, some things, nice little destinations for people to, you know, be walking to.
Yeah, so
Not
my
just a
dream
bunch
has
of
always
dentist
been to own a
offices.
pizza shop. This is an Italian, but I don't want to run a pizza shop. And I
Plus you have
really-
Cheshire Market right there, that has the.
They have a great pizza. I just ate there today. So I'm not sure what the shop will ultimately be. I'm looking at downtown Dublin for the building that I designed. I saw they had a realtor, ice cream shop, coffee house on one end, and a couple other offices that people use. And I'm not even sure what the second floor. Well, one was a realtor, and I think they had both floors for their.
So if you have a realtor and a dentist, those aren't really destination things. You know,
They might
they're
not be.
offices and retail.
Because that's just gonna be open office space, anybody can lease.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's open.
I mean, look at the variety that's already there. I didn't even know there was a vet right next to Cheshire until the other day. I was walking through there.
Again, that's not a destination. And if you want to have like this village kind of feel and people walking and getting together, it needs to be something more, and I hate taking.
Well,
people back to
but
coffee
those other
shops.
types of, I mean, so you would have what I would call an anchor, which would be to have the restaurant,
Right.
you know, or a coffee shop or something like that. But you're also going to have other things that are ancillary to that, like a banker, having a place that people could come in and talk about home loans or lending and stuff like that. I don't know if it would be a full service bank, would be like taking deposits or not.
I still don't see that as a destination for.
There is it's hard to get a destination.
I wouldn't say it's a destination.
I mean, you have to be polaris to get destination. There's no
Right, but,
movie theaters, bars, that's
Right.
what destination parts.
yeah, but it
You don't
still
want
would
that
be
here.
nice to have a few things that would attract people, you know?
I figure with 3 buildings, that's the opportunity to have 6 of those anchor type destination places. And then the other buildings are are fill-ins. There may be people that have arts and crafts. My wife makes cookies, and she's always talking about a shop. She sells them online, but she's always talking about having a shop or something. There may be other people in the area that have those ideas.
And her cookies too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so part of the satisfaction again is building it and then watching what people do with it. So I always say I build the house, but you make it the home. And the happiest people are the ones that spend $400,000 buying their house, but then you come in and you add $50,000 to it. You've made that house yours. You've done things that I, as a builder, can't. Because people
So, but anybody, if they can pay the rent, they can rent the spaces.
Within the confines of what businesses are allowed.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Kim Cracker, Orbs of Cheshire, you need the exact address.
Yes, please.
5210 Bench Lane. Did I hear you say you're guesstimating 200 some people visiting and occupying the spaces? I heard number 200.
There's like 60 houses, I believe, in that area. We're gonna add another 42 people per house. That's 200
Plus the
people.
residential, or plus the visitors to the retail.
Plus the business.
Plus the employees to the retail.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, they're not all gonna rush in at once. What I meant was, I was thinking more in terms of doom and gloom. If nobody stopped at my shops, there'd be 200 people that could walk there and use those shops, but I don't think they would all use
So
them.
right now, you've got 4th Street, East Street, and approximately 10 feet. Brody measured 4th Street for me, so I know it's 10 feet. With the amount of traffic coming up Ford now and on Cheshire, people do not want to wait at the stop sign, so they cut down 4th Street and up East Street. So we get that traffic. We get trucks, of course, the warehouses that are cutting through. We keep having retail / restaurants, whatever. You've got a 10-foot East Street that cannot handle two-way traffic. So you have to kind of pull over to the side and kind of had 2 tractor trailers get stuck in on board and on East Street. Actually kind of forward in East Street because they got stuck in the corner. You've got delivery trucks coming in, you've got refrigerator trucks coming in to the restaurant. You've got the amount of traffic coming in, and you can put 3 entrances, 4 entrances, 5 entrances on Cheshire. If they're coming up Park Street and they know there's a back entrance, they're gonna come down Ford, north on East, and right into the back parking lot. And that parking lot extends all the way over to the residents. So those residents will also be cutting through 4th Street, East Street, and back by your parking lot. As I see it happening now, with just people wanting to bypass the intersection of Cheshire.
Who takes care of your roads?
Nobody.
Why aren't they back to the original dimensions that they were?
They were 10 feet, they were designed at 10 feet, and they were never fixed, and that's been brought to the attention of Berlin, and the road crew. They are in very poor condition. They are falling apart. There's ponding everywhere. They can't handle the truck traffic now. The truck traffic don't care. We've got delivery truck blocking 4th Street, so the access is blocked at any given time. I'm hoping that's been resolved. We call the sheriff every time it happens. Sometimes they fix it, sometimes they don't, but they go right back to it. So we have a lot of issues there. We had a school bus stop right at the corner of East and 4th Street. So, and that's where the kids get on and off instead of back into our neighborhood. So we really can't afford any more traffic on Ford and East Street.
I could make my exit right only. You can only turn right, you can't turn into it.
And we're not allowed to block traffic either, but they do it anyway, so who's going to?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is it wouldn't solve your problems with your roads not being the proper width. I've never understood how we can build new municipalities, new subdivisions, and we don't take care of the old ones that are paying the property taxes since before I was born.
Agreed. So as you come into your back property, if you leave that back entrance in off of the street, when you say a right turn only, or what did you say, right turn?
You could only leave and turn right to go back up to Cheshire.
Correct.
there would be a curve, a concrete impediment that would prevent you from turning left. You would
That
already be
help.
heading
What
right.
about the inside of it? They would be still coming down towards East and turning in. If you did the Y, you know, where you
Now I'm stopping so they can't even turn, they have to go back, they wanna try and cut through. They
So
go
you're
back out to
gonna have
Cheshire,
that
go down.
running, or you-
Well, I'm saying if I did that, it does not fix your road problem. What we need to do is fix your road problem. Any ideas?
That's all right.
They're aware of it.
Well, it can't be the right of way, the right of way is 34 feet. Well, if it's 34 feet, why isn't the road?
Right, it
20?
should be 30, it should be.
Right? I mean, I think I have to make all my roads a minimum of 20.
We
Why
have
aren't
to,
the
we have to
existing roads
pull
around?
into the warehouse, we have to pull into the grass. I'm sure the neighbors that have grass love it, because there's a few houses still on, Ford Street. So we literally have to pull into people's yards and pull into the gravel area, which isn't supposed to be gravel, of the warehouses, in order to pass people. So imagine with, and that's just regular cars. You can
So
imagine-
who does take care of your roads?
No one. Berlin is too, but nothing's happening with our roads, they're saying they're fine, so that's a whole nother story. But going back to you, we also have the corner of Cheshire and Africa that is very busy and congested.
That's
and
gonna
we're adding
be,
a lot of-
changing.
Yeah, because I'm hoping, but I really don't hope, but, you know.
They're changing that to a roundabout, right? It's already on that
We're,
place.
we're backed up to making left out of East Street
Yes,
during rush hour traffic, so.
yes.
Okay, so I know that when the first person that wanted to develop your space, that we didn't end up getting it, they wanted 30-some houses on 11 acres. And your group thought it was too dense and you didn't like it and it was too close and fire issues. And I sat through 2 hours, 3 hours of that meeting where you guys were like, So I'm trying to figure out how all of a sudden we're getting, I don't know how big an acreage is where the houses are going, just the houses.
Who was the builder?
I don't, we're not gonna talk about that, I'm just saying it didn't
I'm
go
just-
through, because it was too dense and they didn't have enough play space and all this type of stuff. I know the density was a huge issue with you guys, so how big is the square part, not the rectangle for the business, how big is the square part for the
7 acres.
residential? How many?
7 acres.
Okay, so you can't allow 30-some houses on the 11, but there's going to be 40 on 7?
So
No,
one of the
no.
ones about that
You can
was,
put the houses anywhere on your 11-acre tract. They could be stacked up to the moon if there wasn't a height.
No, this was all about density and open space and walkability, but a lot of it was density and having space to move and how close the houses were and all this type of stuff. And the guy did not get approved, and she ended up being able to acquire the property.
He withdrew.
Uh,
It didn't get voted on. which
No,
is
he
okay.
didn't.
Okay, well, I
He's
just,
talking about
you
meets
gave
the
a lot of
density.
pushback where I think even he's like, I can't make this work, so.
well, that was an
Well,
11
I mean, I
flag.
think it's nice, I mean.
Some builders have a specific thing that they do. And, I don't know if it was Epcon, there was a company before them that used to only build these pinwheel, 1-floor retirement homes. They had 4 different garages coming in from 4 different directions like a pinwheel. The llama farm down at the corner of Africa and Worthington, Galena, they ended up buying that and building, something like that there. They will not do 2 stories. They don't do basements. So if they get a piece of land and they're not allowed to put the number that they want on it, they're not gonna adjust it. I can adjust it. I can build a 1,500 square foot home. I can build a 15,000 square foot home. Once I know what the rules are, I'll adjust it to make it fit. And usually I build a pretty nice, home, good quality home. I can't speak for why he gave up. I wouldn't have given up on the land that backs up to the.
I mean, he wanted a density, variance, and I think he did get some negative feedback, but you're
I'm not
saying
asking for a
you
density
understand, right,
variance.
you understand that we can't give a density. This
That's a-
regulation says that we cannot give a density
That's the one thing they,
very,
2 things they can't, change. I think the other one was if the park is required, you can't waive.
And usually developers, that's the first thing they ask for. So I appreciate that you're acknowledging that we cannot and will not be interested or willing to do that.
Yeah, the height is really my
Right.
only question, and sidewalks, you know, the
Right.
setbacks, because we're building a smaller home. But the only things I had a concern about, the density, I knew I wasn't gonna be able to go 46. Again, the houses get smaller if I use the apartments count as dwellings, so I'm still at 46, even if I built nothing but an apartment building. The most it could ever be would be a 46 unit building, so, but again, I'm starting from the standpoint that this was the village. We need some village buildings, we need some village income. I'll pay for the roads for it, but it would be nice to be able to address some of those road issues, but I don't know the whole history of that. I
Well, I
mean,
think each year, we have a new building superintendent, or road superintendent, and one of the trustees has chartered them with dealing with some of the road issues.
Who snowplows
I talked to Mike about this, no problem.
I
it?
thought
East
Berlin
Street
Town,
and Fourth Street, do you?
I think Berlin
They
Township does.
snowplow the snow onto the sidewalk where my kids go to the bus stop.
Yeah, about 5 feet,
There is a fact here, there's a fact here. As progress begins, roads tend to improve. That's a fact of life. 3Bs in the Cane, when I moved out here 25 years ago, you could not go down 3Bs in the Cane Road with 2 cars in certain areas. That is a fact of life, through the wood area, I lived in the wood area. You could not even, the road was falling in and corroded. And it took about 10 years, and then they started widening and fixing it, it's still a crooked road. But they keep on going it and going. But, you know, as improvements come on for the community, the roads will also improve with it. That's what we have to put a fight up for it, though, and let people know. You have to put your voice out there and let people know about, hey, we got this nice here, but
and I would say, while I'm putting in all my roads to meet county standards, I would definitely want to see East Street because it directly impacts me. Stretching back to that subdivision, should be in good,
Once you get to the
good condition.
subdivision, once you get to 4th Street south of the subdivision, this road widens up, and it's 2 cars, no problem. It's just,
Well, again, the right of way is 34 feet. There's no reason that pavement shouldn't be 24 feet wide with no sidewalk.
who's the new, road commissioner? Is it Jesse?
Kathy,
He's not named, he's assistant road superintendent, and they
Okay.
haven't named him, he has a, I think. hopefully
Because
soon
who's
he'll be
in
promoted.
charge of, who's in charge of your board of trustees?
Megan Rail,
Rail. What's your last name?
Rail,
Yeah, that's her.
R-A-E-H.
So I talked to Megan when I presented all the violations and went over all that with her. I spoke to her and she like left the meeting after it was all done, came to Saturday, meetings, I'm not allowed to, we're not allowed to go back and forth, I guess. So she came to talk to me after, and she was gonna have him meet with me because when Brody went and looked at the road, Brody said there was nothing wrong with the roads. Well, there is, and so, but I never heard from him, so we could meet. I mean, the ponding, like, because of the way the elevations are, the gravel lots, I mean, they were graded, everything, just made the problem worse, and so a pond's clear out in the middle, it ponds in the exits, every exit, 4th Street, East Street, Williams, Charles, all those guys have ponding, so if the ice is over, you know, it's a problem, you know, especially stopping in the winter and stuff, so they're mad. He never got with me, so I could walk him through, there's tons of pictures that show the problem, but I have not personally walked with him, and Brody said it wasn't a problem. I don't know what his personal take is on it, and whether he ever came down to investigate that. So I would be happy to share pictures, I would be happy to walk him and show him the problem, it's like memorized and burned in my brain, so I don't have any problem. And the road's caving in, it's falling off the corners, you can imagine that big 3-foot trailers on there.
I would suggest getting a hold of Megan again, because this board is zoning and we can't really help with the roads part.
No, that's fine, I'm just saying that has
Well,
been
we
addressed,
appreciate
so.
it.
I just haven't heard
But
anything.
there's not a whole lot that we can.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
He wanted to know why it's gonna take, I'm just saying, I was supposed to meet and that didn't happen, so I don't know if he's looked at it or not, that's all.
I think she's just saying in light of, you know, before this type of thing is improved and we're adding all of this traffic,
Just going to exacerbate the
it's
problem
gonna
that you
exacerbate
already had.
that we already have and it's not being taken care of.
Good summary, thank you. Is there any other comments, Kathy?
I love the name.
I do too.
I love the name, Cheshire Mill, because we want to stay away from it.
Berlin.
Lately is a Berlin. We've got a lot of Berlin, and I'm not, it's just, as working in the office, we're getting all of our Berlins mixed up, aren't we, Jay?
Subdivisions, new subdivisions, that's all, so.
Thank
In a donut shop.
I was gonna suggest they change it to Berlin Mill.
I love the name, and I did not realize, and I didn't grow up here, but, that they just want some mill.
Yeah, a grist mill and a sawmill.
I had no idea.
They used to have, I think 3 blacksmiths here at one time, 2 grocery stores.
I know.
I think it used to be on the other side and then it burned down and they built it on the west side.
Really?
And I think the first sawmills were down by the creek, when it was just a creek, and then they built them up here away because they had some flooding.
Well, we have the cemetery back here
When the dam went in,
when.
yeah.
So was all this before the dam?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
this was back in 18,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
like 1849, I think.
It seems like 10 years old then.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you. I think we all think it's a great plan.
Thank you.
We'll do whatever we can. I think Jake is your main contact, obviously. Questions from zoning. Is there anything specific you want from us?
No, I need to go back and think and make some choices.
I just, yeah, we just think for all of us, just to try and your best to have no divergence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how important that rooftop patio is. Maybe just one, I mean, I'll take a look at that and see how it fits in. And if I can design it with the building so it looks complementary.
As you know, this is informal.
No.
I can tell you from the heart that I think you're in the right place in putting something together that will benefit the township.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I need to stop it. Rosanna,
Okay, before you go, you can't leave yet.
Any other
My
business?
hands are ended,
I'll leave them every single time. I said, I love Tavern, go to Cheshire Market, and I keep going back, even though they get my order wrong. Your wife doesn't do anything.
That's all I wanted to say.
I can tell you that I tried to get hold of you. Meeting last week with, RJ 17 for something, and it was table maybe county.
it was the file.
Yeah, that's why I was.
Yeah,
I gotta be still in their meeting here.
You mean the
Yeah, residential is what we just met on the last.
Yeah, and that's confusing to us because we have 2 R4s. We have an R4 that's in a PRD, but then we have an R4 that's part of the BI.
Hey, John?
Yes.
And one is 1.25.
We're still in the meeting.
And the other is 4. Because the R4 is supposed to stand for that in the cloud.
Okay.
So knowing the difference and making sure that it's not confusing. And I mentioned to Megan is, why do we do that? That's kind of the only thing. And I asked her to give you a call, you know, if that's what she does.
Okay.
So I just wonder if there was anything else.
I think I would like to know, do we have any, are we going to be seeing GNR properties again, coming back through? Or
We have
Only if they
like-
resubmit.
Yeah, we voted on it, it's done with us, it's up to the trustees.
So is there anything that they're going to need to come back to us?
Not unless they do
Unless
a
they resubmit?
resubmission.
Okay. All right, and then what else do we have? Do we have anything else on the business park right now that's coming up?
Megan said a couple of weeks ago that don't worry about RJ 17 was planning, saying that nothing's happening because she's got a list of people who are calling with interest.
So we should be having more come up.
We will be having one more.
We do have one more, okay, on that same plot of land or on a, okay, that was my question is, do we have? It's just, it's nice to be able to then drill in with our books ahead of time as well. when we
It's
get
in
it,
the
to
early
have more
stages,
time.
so it's in the first stage of
Okay,
the workflow chart, so.
are
it's
they
not-
coming in with a, well, I guess they don't even need to come in with a initial.
No,
Uh,
it'll be
they
the
have to go to the
pre-application,
board.
it follows the workflow chart, so it's starting out with the pre-application form right now, which is just checking for completeness and also going through RBC. So it goes through RBC
Okay.
on the 27th.
Are you allowed to tell us where it's located
In the cloud.
or what it
Yeah,
is?
in the cloud.
Yeah,
It's beside, what's
it was in
the,
the BCO or BIO?
I believe it's BCO.
Okay.
It's right beside the RV place.
Oh, okay.
RCD, is that what it's called?
RCD, no, that's not RCD.
But I know, wait,
Right
do you
beside
mean,
Agri Drive, I
do you
believe.
mean on where Africa Road starts?
I believe so.
Or, oh, okay,
I haven't looked at it.
No,
I think
it's
still has to
actually,
go
it's
through.
actually the other side.
Is it on the left side of it, if you're looking at it?
It's on the east side.
but I'm saying there's two RV places.
It's,
Are you talking about where Africa Road is,
They're
or?
both on
Or
Africa.
down
Road.
here.
no, because,
Well, one's on
It was on
Africa, one's
Denver.
on 36th.
Okay, all right, so it's, yes, it's on the other side of the bridge. Okay, all right.
And they're moving.
do that.
The one RV shop's moving over to that empty lot now.
I have heard that RCD was offered some lot, when they do the new
Exchange.
exchange next to 3637. But I've not seen any planned start date on the thing yet.
I mean, that's been, you know,
5,
over a
6
number of
years
years,
now.
so.
Well, what are they doing on TVs and Katie over there?
We are still live, just so.
That's water and sewer.
For what?
For a development that they're putting in this part of Sunbury.
Yeah, that's the road, probably, the pre-work to the road.
They're not even worried, that's, I
Because
guess,
they gotta get it in
It's
before they put
just
the road in.
utilities. It's just utilities
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, which has to go in before the road starts.
Exactly, yeah, so it's, yeah, it's in utilities.
That's all being done because of the road.
Not new subject.
Depends on who
way.
you
Yeah.
It depends on who you.
Yeah.
yeah, I went to a meeting 5 years ago when they had plans.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
I got
yeah.
all the maps and stuff, and I still have the maps, but nothing's
It's
changed.
still on the list.
Right, it is on the list.
Before we get any more applications, are we gonna get any clarification on whether action needs to be changed in our wording?
It's in progress.
Okay.
Yeah, that one, I think the biggest one I heard, when I was down
So
south,
we're
had to do with that, those numbers of, as the density went up, or the size went up, the parking went down, and that was kind of true.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, all of it's in progress right now.
Okay.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, 'cause, you know, I wasn't sure anybody was hearing us.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That was one of the questions to Megan too, is.
Okay.
So Jake, it's your turn. Do you have anything new?
Not have anything new for you guys?
How are we, in terms of building permits, what are you guys seeing with compared to?
That'd be a Kathy question. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly what number wise we're sitting at. Kathy, do you know what number wise we are, like building permits?
We've kind of talked about
I
that
know
in
we
the
just did
past,
our
like
monthly
how
report.
are, what are you
With
seeing
everything
building permits?
from new pool sheds, room additions, homes, we're only at, BT 23-0088. We haven't even hit 100 yet. So, but it's been picking up.
Okay, you're seeing more stuff.
But I don't know, is your question, is it like how many new homes or?
Yeah, more new
Okay,
homes.
I don't know the new home.
I mean,
I
we
can
don't have
tell
much
you.
land left, so it's kind of like.
Yeah, we got a lot coming.
Well, what I'm saying is, yeah, so once those start, it will be interesting to see how, kind of at what point those neighborhoods are starting to pick up.
I can tell you how many new homes we did in March in just a second. I'm trying to print the minutes for.
Okay.
First,
Is there anything on the agenda for the next meeting?
no,
April
no,
29th?
not so far.
The
We
only
may have
thing that
another
I
informal
do,
Oh,
in addition for the team, is that with Megan, she changed about 3 months ago that these informals that we just had are to be held with everybody, not just one person. And,
I mean,
It
they
can-
weren't
it can-
ever allowed to be held.
You're not supposed
Yes,
to.
They were. They were.
we, actually,
Yeah,
the
that's a
one we
There
did Shire,
was issues
Yeah, one of the trustees.
the one that did Shire was just, Sherry and I.
Oh.
But it created some,
Some
Well,
Well, we
questions.
had, we had a lot, we had informals with her as well,
And
but,
Steve had informed
Yeah.
us that sometimes the rest of the zoning didn't hit it, and then they would use that, say, well, here's what zoning's told us.
exactly.
So this way, everybody
Yeah,
has
it's all-
equal to it. That's
yeah.
all. So this other one, Jake, what is that?
They approved.
We were supposed to do the
That's the one that might, may be coming up on the 29th.
25th, 25th?
On the, or yeah, 25th. I can't remember. I think
Well, it's the
I
school,
believe
it's Evans Farms,
Yeah.
and they want to do some things differently, that they were gonna have a school,
Yes.
now it's not on their property anymore. And how they're gonna do density and stuff, they need to bring something in front. It's gonna
Okay.
change the zoning.
So they're coming back for yeah.
I don't know what they're coming back for. You know, all we know is it's
But they previously had, so this is considered a significant change from what they've asked for before.
the trustees decide that, whether it's considered a major or minor.
But if we had already approved something for that land, and now it's coming back, and they're coming back.
Now he's coming down for an informal discussion about what his ideas are. It doesn't mean anything's
Okay,
changed, it means
that's what I'm saying on a previously approved
previously approved plan, and
yes.
it was actually 3 binders this size, and in the process, we're gonna change it down to 1 binder that made everything simpler, but it doesn't sound that way.
Okay, but it's on a previously, so he's coming back with the potential of changing
Yes, that's the informal part, and then he has to decide
what he wants to
whether
do.
he has to
Yes.
submit a request. Could it be the BZA,
Okay.
appeals, or BZC and trustees, and whether they do major or minor?
Okay,
None of that's been decided, it was just they wanted to have an informal.
okay.
Because I guess the management at Evans Farms is totally different now. Tony nor Dan are involved.
Okay.
And this new guy, and new funding, different home builder,
Mhm.
and some other things. And that's all rumor, but I want everybody to hear the same thing. Okay, the next regular scheduled meeting is April the 25th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, we want to stay.
You want to stay? Only if we're warm enough for I gotta go get my winter jacket, it's in the
Oh
car.
my gosh, I have one more question. I didn't get to watch the video for the BZA the other day. Do you know what the result of that was? Wasn't it about the cell tower?
No.
No.
It was just conditional use permit for
Conditional
model
use,
home. It was
I'm
boring.
not really so concerned. I thought it was something different, sorry. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Out of here. Take it, training through.
That's